Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this Q Live event, where we'll be discussing the many different Microsoft 365 backup offerings available and how you go about selecting the best solution for your organization. I'm Gareth John, a solutions architect here at Q Associates, and I can testify firsthand that this isn't as easy as simply extending your existing on-prem backup solution to also cover your SaaS deployments. We have a short amount of time after the presentation for Q&As. The Q&A is open now, incidentally, so please feel free to type in any questions you have during the event. But now I'd like to introduce you to my colleague Luke Wallace, who will be presenting today. Luke, over to you.
Thanks, Gareth. Good morning, everybody. As Gareth said, my name's Luke Wallace. I'm one of the solutions architects at Q Associates. And I've been kind of responsible for going out there and looking at the market to see what products are out there for backing up your 365 environment. So if we start with the basics, the customer perception out there at the minute is that they don't need to back up Office 365 and Microsoft does this for them. It's a fair assumption. They move all the data out to Office 365, they expect everything to be taken care of for them. Now, the reality of that is that Microsoft recommend that you regularly back up your content and data, and that can be found in your Microsoft Services Agreement. If we look at why you need that protection, so just down the left-hand side there, we can see the application stack building out, and we can see that Microsoft take care of the application, the operating system, the virtualization layer, the hardware layer, and the networking as well. Now you can also see that the arrow extends into the red data box that's highlighted, and it's kind of a half and half between the customer and Microsoft in terms of responsibility. So customers maintain the users and the application admin, and then they've also got responsibility of the data along with Microsoft. So it is a joint responsibility. If we take a look at the failures and data protection responsibilities, what the customer is trying to protect against is human error, programmatic errors, malicious insider attacks, external hackers, and virus and malware. And then from Microsoft's end, they're looking at the hardware failure, software failure, natural disasters, and power outages. So there's two different scenarios there for different failures that can happen, and we can see that it's a joint responsibility model between the customer and Microsoft. If you go out to any of the backup vendors, you're going to see this slide and probably the one previous as well. You can take my word for that. I've sat through enough of these events now to see that they all sing the same tune effectively. So what do Microsoft back up? There is kind of a get out of jail free card with the Microsoft offering, and that mainly surrounds recycle bin. So deleted items for Exchange, deleted items for SharePoint, and same for OneDrive as well. So you kind of get that initial recycle bin, that first stage up to 7 days for SharePoint and OneDrive. Thereafter, it goes up to 3 months. And similarly for deleted items in Exchange, you get that 1 month grace period. And thereafter, we've got permanent deletion. So you can't actually get that data back. This is where having a third-party product would come in use to be able to restore that data. Now, as I mentioned, that is kind of a get out of jail free card. It's not a full backup product, so there are some limitations of it. So it doesn't make a second copy of that data. Now you'll hear backup vendors, even with the traditional on-premise stuff, they'll talk about the 3-2-1 backup strategy. So having 3 copies of your data on 2 different media and keeping one of them copies off-site. The Microsoft offering does not do that. This is why you need a third-party backup product. It doesn't keep data for long periods. So we saw on the previous slide there, there are limitations. So 14 days retention is default in Exchange. That can be extended out to 30 days. And then we've got the 93-day retention on there as well for OneDrive and SharePoint. Now, some people will say that they can use litigation hold. Now, that is not a practical backup solution. You know, we need to be looking at proper products for this. We can't just rely on litigation hold. And then we've got restores are limited, so there is no point in time restore for Exchange, and we've got the additional cost where if a user's left and you need to keep them in the environment for a period of time, that's going to cost an additional license. And the restore process to get this data back can actually be quite complex, requiring PowerShell scripts. Now, some of the technologies we've reviewed, they're appearing on screen just now. So we've gone out to the market and looked at various different offerings from various different vendors. It's taken quite a while to gather this information, and they're just some of the ones that we have looked at. There are others that we've got in the pipeline, so we are waiting for feedback from some of the vendors. But essentially, that we've gathered ample amount of data for different criteria on different vendors. And what we've tried to do is not only look at the positives for these vendors, but also the negatives as well. Now, if you go out to some of these technology vendors and ask them if they can give you a solution for Office 365, the answer is always going to be yes, but it's what features have they got and where are the limitations? And that's the stuff that we've gone out and looked at. So one of the first questions we should be asking is, well, what do I need to back up? So we've got the 4 applications within Office 365, so Exchange Online, OneDrive, Microsoft Teams, and SharePoint. Now, each customer is going to be on a different path of Office 365, so not everybody's going to be using all 4 of these applications. So if, for example, a customer is only running Exchange Online, then they have no desire to use SharePoint, OneDrive, or Teams, then why should they be looking at a backup product that's going to back up everything when they only need to back up one element of Office 365? So you'll see later on, but some of these vendors are actually playing catch up in terms of backup. So not everybody can back up Exchange, OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams. Some of them can do only a couple of the applications that I mentioned on screen. Now, some of the products can actually back up other SaaS platforms. So examples of that are G Suite, Microsoft Dynamics, Salesforce, and Slack. So if you do have other SaaS-based applications in your environment, why not open the conversation up to not only focus on 365, but the other SaaS-based applications? I know that Salesforce, for example, have recently pulled their in-house backup product for Salesforce, and now you have to go out and leverage a third-party backup product. So if you was using Salesforce in your environment, then why not open the Office 365 conversation up to that as well? Now, the second thing we need to look at is, well, where do I want to back up that data to? So some of these vendors that we've looked at, they can back up to one location and one location only. Some can do multiple locations. Now, if we take a look at backing up to on-premises, you may think that's a strange thing to have. Why would you want to pull the data back on-prem when you've just sent that out to Office 365? Well, some of the answers for that are maybe you've got storage on-prem that you want to maximize the investment, so maximize the return on investment. So you can pull your 365 data back and store it on that cheaper disk if you like. You can push the data out to Azure Blob Storage, or we've got Amazon S3 or S3 compatible. So by S3 compatible, what I mean is the likes of Wasabi Storage or NetApp Storage Grid. So something else that's running the S3 protocol. And then we've got backup to SaaS provider storage. So a couple of the vendors we've looked at, they've got their own data centers with their own storage, and you effectively rent that storage from them. Quick look at some definitions and responsibilities. I know most of you will be familiar with what these are, but just to recap. So we've got infrastructure as a service. So the IaaS platform, essentially you're shifting some of the responsibility out to the hyperscalers while you maintain some of the other responsibilities, such as the operating system and the applications that live on there. On premises, so your traditional bring everything on-prem if you like, and you've got the full responsibility of the application stack. So one of the benefits of that is you get to see everything that's going on. You don't necessarily get that with an IaaS platform or a SaaS platform. So SaaS platform, probably the easiest one. The full application stack, the responsibility is shifted elsewhere. So you only maintain responsibility for managing the admin of that system. You don't have responsibility for everything that's under the hood. So another question we need to ask is, well, how do I want to manage this? So do I want to bring that data back on-prem, or do I want a GUI that's on-prem? So that could be something like bolting onto your existing on-premises backup infrastructure. Or do I want an IaaS platform? Do I want to shift some of that responsibility out to the hyperscalers? So I've got some customer control, but the cloud provider would take over the hardware responsibility. But I'm still in charge of things like scaling up that environment if I do need additional data movers or proxy servers when I'm talking about my backup infrastructure. And then the SaaS-based offering, so this is probably easiest to set up. We're talking about setting that up in minutes, effectively logging into a website and pointing that SaaS-based application at my Office 365 environment. I've got zero management of hardware or software, and I've also got the benefits of automatic scaling. So if, for example, an acquisition happened, then I can quickly point the backup infrastructure at the other Office 365 tenancy and start backing up that infrastructure. Now, what specific requirements do I have? So what I mean by this is we've looked at some of the kind of the default criteria of why I need to back up, what I want to back up, and where I want to back up to. If we can actually drill down a little bit further, we can utilize the data that we've gathered to make sure we choose the right solution for you. So how many times a day do I want to back up? Is it acceptable to back up once a day, or do I need more than that? Now, some of these systems are actually limited to once a day because not only are they limited at Microsoft's end by pulling that data out, so egress in Microsoft 365, but also on ingress. So I spoke about a SaaS-based offering. So the likes of Acronis and Veritas have got their own data centers, and they're effectively pulling all that data in, which is a multi-tenant environment. If you imagine Microsoft are rate limiting the data coming out of the data center, the same thing's happening on ingress at Veritas and Acronis, for example. Now, the reason they have to do that is because they would have thousands of customers in the data center and they don't want to saturate the link. So some of these systems are actually limited to once a day. And then do I require additional functionality for compliance? So we're talking about things like credit card searches. So what we're doing is leveraging that backup data that we've got and turning that into a true business asset. We're actually generating insights from the backup jobs. Do I want a single pane of glass? So we're talking about, you'll have in a hybrid multi-cloud infrastructure, you're going to have some data that's on-prem, some that might be in Amazon Web Services, some that might be in Azure, and some that might be in Google Cloud, for example. Is it really acceptable to go out and purchase a different product for different parts of the infrastructure? Or are we looking at one product that can do everything for us? So it can take care of the SaaS-based offerings such as Microsoft 365, it can take care of its traditional data center, and it can take care of endpoint backups as well, such as laptops or phones. Now, there's an option in there for an MSP model. So Q Associates have got the ability to take care of all of that backup infrastructure for you as a managed service provider model. So really removing the headache of having to manage your Office 365 backups. And then how many licenses do I require? So some of the backup vendors actually have license packs, and some of these are actually a minimum of 50. Now, if you've got 200 seats within Office 365, is it acceptable that when I hit 201 users that I need to go out and buy another 50 licenses? Probably not. So some of the products have got minimum license counts, and some of them you can actually buy in single license packs. So them products are probably more tailored to organizations of a smaller size. And then do I require other license features? So we mentioned around compliance checks. So a lot of these other applications that hook into the 365 require an additional license. And if you do require that, you obviously need to factor that in when you're looking at an Office 365 backup product. And then we spoke about earlier other SaaS-based applications such as Salesforce and Dynamics. If you have got them other SaaS-based applications, I would recommend that you extend the scope of looking for a 365 backup product to also encompass the likes of Salesforce or Dynamics. So what have we looked at? Well, we had around 90 criteria that we've researched. So you can see some of them building out on screen right now. So we've collated all the data from the different technologies that we've reviewed and created a matrix. Now, we've done that with 2 rounds in questioning per vendor. So that involved their sort of PowerPoint presentations and marketing, but also demonstrations as well. Now, one of the best things we did as part of this research is also looking at the roadmaps. So we've taken a look at what these guys have got coming up, because if your project is not going to kick off for another 6 or 8 months, the chances are that these products are going to have caught up in terms of the services that they can offer. So for example, I spoke about pretty much all the products being able to back up Exchange Online, but some of them can't back up SharePoint. If you give it 6 or 8 months because your project's not due to kick off for them, then we're probably going to be looking at a different matrix by that point, because some of these products will have caught up. They all rely on Microsoft APIs being released. As soon as that happens, their development kicks in, and they have to kind of play catch up, if you like, with the Microsoft APIs. A couple of things that I want to point out on here. So some of these systems can actually, you've got the ability to be able to preview emails. Now, that sounds all well and good on the face of it, but then you think about security aspect of that. So if I've got a HR director and I've got John who works on first line support, is it really going to be acceptable that John can access the HR director's emails using the backup set? Probably not. So we need to be looking at things like role-based access control. So we've got an option in there at the far right-hand side that says, how granular is the RBAC? Now, believe it or not, some of these products actually don't have that level of granularity within the RBAC controls. And then similarly with the audit login, we'd also want to know who's doing what and when with that data. So just be careful when you are looking at some of these products that what seems like a good idea on the face of it is backed up with also good security practices too. So these are some of the things that we've been able to point out by doing this research. Now, the biggest question you're going to ask me is, well, how much does it cost? And the simple answer is, it depends. So there's two different licensing models that are sort of on offer. Not all products have the same license offering. Some of them are different. Some of them actually operate both licensing models. So that is a pay per seat. So if you've got 200 users within Office 365, you pay a license fee per headcount and then pay per gigabyte. So however much data you've got stored on the back end, and that's sometimes after compression and deduplication. So if you've got 5 terabytes, for example, and that's compressed down to 1 terabyte, you'll only pay for the 1 terabyte's worth of data that you're storing in the data center. It becomes a breaking point when one model is preferred over the others, and Q can help you do that calculation to find out which is the most cost-effective way around that. With like anything, the longer you buy something for, the more cost effective it becomes. So if you take out a 36-month term versus a 12-month term, you're going to pay less over the 36 months than you will do for the 12 months. And then storage costs. So depending on where you store that data, so we looked at, where do we want to send that data to? If you're bringing that back on-prem, well, we need to work out what your storage is. Are you running a tier 1 storage vendor to store backup products? Are you running something a little bit more cost effective? The other thing is, if you're moving that data out to Azure Blob versus Amazon Web Services, the two costs are going to be different. And similarly, if you're using an S3 bucket, for example, a NetApp storage grid, again, all them costs are going to change depending on which media you're storing that on. And then compute costs. So some of the applications actually require proxy servers or data movers. So that's virtual machines or physical machines that can move that data around the infrastructure. Now, depending on how many data movers you require, obviously compute costs are going to go up or down. And then you've also got to factor in the compute resource as well. So if we're looking at 4 virtual CPU and 32 gig of RAM, for example, and I need 10 of them machines, that's eating heavily into your hypervisor infrastructure that you've probably not factored in when you're looking at a backup for Office 365. Networking costs, if you are going to bring that data on-prem, you need to make sure the WAN bandwidth is ample enough to be able to drag all that data back. You'd need to do the calculation on that to make sure you've got ample bandwidth and you're not saturating the link. Proxy servers we spoke about, and that kind of goes hand in hand with Windows licenses as well. Some of these applications require Windows licenses with an application laid on top. So you need to factor in that as well if you're not running something like a Microsoft Data Center license. Egress costs. So if you are going to be doing restores out of Amazon S3, for example, you're going to get charged every time you drag some data out, and that needs to be factored in when you're thinking about the monthly bill that's coming from AWS. And then additional licensing costs. So if you are looking at a pure Office 365 backup product, okay, you're going to see the cost for that. But if you require additional data insights, that's probably going to cost you a little bit more because you require an additional license for that. So the biggest thing we're looking at is, well, what is the total cost of ownership? So cannot stress enough how important it is to not just factor in the licensing. If you go out to a vendor, ask for 2,000 licenses, they're going to give you a quote for that. What you're not going to see is all the other things that are going to cost you money. And they're all the things we've just spoke about, such as your compute and your storage costs. So what we've done is we've factored all that into the data gathering that we've done, and we've come up with a calculator so that, if you do need 2,000 users and you are going to be storing 5 terabytes worth of storage, and that is in Microsoft Azure Blob storage in the West UK data center, we've got all that information. We can program that in and tell you what the cost is going to be. So in summary, we've looked at, well, why do I need to back up? Again, I touched on this earlier. Every backup vendor is going to give you the same pitch on that. What do I want to back up? Where do I want to back it up to? How do I want to manage it? What specific requirements do I have? And how much will it cost? So if we forget about the top left and the top right, so why do we need backup and how much will it cost for a second? What we're saying is, if you can answer the 4 questions, what do I want to back up? Where do I want to back it up to? How do I want to manage it? And what specific requirements do I have? We can tell you what the best product for you is out there. So if, for example, you don't need to back up Teams and you want to back up to, let's say, Amazon S3, we can tell you the products that can do that for you. There is obviously a little bit more digging that we'd have to do around, well, how many times a day do you want to back up, and minimum license costs and that kind of stuff. But we've got all the information to hand to assist you on that. Gareth, that's the end of the presentation, so I'll hand back to you.
Thanks, Luke. Very interesting. And it seems clear that there are lots of different factors to consider. We have had a number of questions come in, so hopefully we've got just enough time to answer at least a few of them. First one, do any of the products allow you to exclude files from OneDrive backup?
Yes, there are. So there are a couple of products that have got it currently, and then there are a couple of products that it's actually on the roadmap. So the reason why you'd want to do that is, as I mentioned, that some of these storage vendors charge per, these backup vendors charge per gigabyte. So if you give a user 50 gigs worth of OneDrive storage, there is a chance that they're going to bring in family photos and actually upload them to the OneDrive. Now, you as an organization would then be paying for that to back up that product, or that set of data, should I say. So you could put policies in there that say, well, we'll exclude JPEGs and TIFFs, for example.
Okay, all right. So some do, some don't, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, cool. And the next question, I think I know the answer to this, but Luke, do you have an opinion as to which product is best?
Okay, so hopefully the points come across that there is no best product. So it's all about which product is right for your organization based on your requirements. So as I mentioned, if you've got Exchange Online, you've got SharePoint, but you're not using OneDrive and you're not using Teams, then why look for a product that can back up all of that application set? And again, things like backup targets, where do you want to back that data up to? You need to tell us what's important to you, and we can match that with the criteria that we've researched.
Okay, got you. Okay, well, I'm afraid we've run out of time now, although there are some more questions. But don't worry, we will be in contact via email if you haven't had your questions addressed online. Also, if you have any further questions after the event, then please either reach out to your normal Q Associates contact or account manager, or alternatively, you can submit your queries to the email on the screen at the moment. That's 365.backup.qassociates.co.uk. Finally, I'd just like to suggest that, as obviously we've got a large amount of data about the product differentiations, and as Q Associates are an independent supplier of IT services and solutions, we'd very much welcome further engagement with you so that we can assist you in selecting the right backup for your organization. The video of this event will be available on the Q Associates YouTube channel later today. So if you or any of your colleagues would like to rewatch the content, then you can find it there. For now, though, I'd like to thank you for your time, and I shall leave you all to the rest of your day.